Anthony Flores.
How's it going?
Thanks for coming on the show.
I'm really happy to be here.
I'm so pumped for this.
Me too.
We have neurofeedback. We have meditation, consciousness, enlightened states. Yes. It's a crucial topic. Maximize our well-being moment to moment. Our family's well-being, our friends' well-being, our community's well-being, the world's well-being. Just through a deeper awareness to our own states of being, of experience, and how to re-baseline them to higher states.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Such a crucial topic. I'm so grateful to have you on. I'm grateful to Shaker Pie for introducing us.
Shaker's the best.
Love you, Shaker. Thank you very much. And let's jump in. We have some assets that we'll be showing. I'm really excited, and we'll be breaking those down. Anthony, let's talk about your journey and how you got interested in this space.
Sure. I was surrounded by spirituality Eastern spirituality when I was young. I had an aunt who was Buddhist. I had other people in an Indian guru path, and I was also really nerdy, so I ended up going to Stanford University, and I didn't know what I wanted to do once I got there because I didn't realize I didn't want to be a doctor or a lawyer or engineer, and so I decided to just choose an audacious goal and walk onto the tennis team, but I wasn't good enough, so I started studying, and there was a book called The Inner Game of Tennis that was all about Zen applied to tennis. So I got really obsessed with Zen meditation, and I went to a Zen center every week, and I was just doing 50 books. I did everything I could to kind of evolve in Zen. And I also, so that was one aspect of it. And then another one was that I happened to just go into a chiropractic office in Palo Alto, which I think it was fate, that it was a method called network spinal analysis by this guy, Donnie Epstein, who it looks really weird, but basically through light touches either to the spine or even in the field of the body outside of the spine, the spine will start to oscillate and wave on its own without the person trying to do anything. And that starts to send current and energy and information up the spinal cord, so where you start to become aware of how there's all this energy at the root of your spine, and then how that energy flows up and it can go to your head. And I ended up doing, because that was my freshman year, I ended up doing 500 of these sessions. So it really opened up something energetically in my spine. And I would experience sometimes awakened states or oneness states in those sessions or after those sessions. And it planted a seed for what I experienced, or, and what I kind of evolved in with neurofeedback later on. But that was those were two very big early things that shaped my journey for sure.
So you had early exposure to spirituality, specifically Buddhism.
Yep.
Okay. And then you also had what was the other one we were talking about?
Sant Mat. Yes.
How do I say it again?
Yeah. Sant Mat.
Sant
Mat.
Yes. Sant Mat.
Yes.
That's right. Sant Mat.
And it's a very devotional path. They have a living guru, and they 2.5 hours of meditation a day, and strict vows around lifestyle purity and things like that. So yeah, it's a very serious kind of spiritual path.
Yeah, and we were just looking it up and talking about it a bit, because I had interestingly have dived into so many of the planetary spiritualities, but even some of them I'm still not super familiar with, and Sant Mat's one of them. SANT space MAT for those that are interested in looking it up. And it's so interesting. The reason why the word perennial just continues to over and over again is because even while we were looking at Sant Mat, even online, that it shows that the same idea of accessing that inner wisdom of understanding Tattvamasi, you are that, we are that, just the most fundamental, no matter what indigenous civilization or no matter what mystic tradition it is, it's the ice cream, no matter what flavor it is right here. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It's so beautiful.
It's based on something called Surat Shabad Yoga, which is basically a yoga of light and sound. So, but light and sound are universal to every spiritual tradition. So, yeah.
And then you had this other really interesting second aspect to that, which was, and you mentioned Joe Dispenza before we started as well, and he has it's becoming supernatural, and he talks a lot about being able to just do what in like Theravada Buddhism, you have these experiences where you feel Kundalini awakenings. There's many mystic traditions where you feel these Kundalini awakenings, but specifically from Theravada, you take a 10-day period to just strictly practice your respiration and your focus and your ability to have extremely high sensitivity. And so it makes sense to me that when you talk about chiropractic, when you talk about the spine, and when you talk about the ability to sort of hone one's attention more frequently on trying to, in a sense, do something, it kind of looks something like, it is kind of that process. And, even as you do that, standing up straight with the shoulders back type thing, you feel
a current. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there's, related to Buddhism, so there's so much serendipity. So fast forward into when I became a writer later on, and I was interning with this really legendary writer in the space, and one of the other interns had studied quite extensively in Buddhism with this author that's written a bunch of books. His name is Bill Beaudry, and he has a lot of books that address just the physical part of the spiritual awakening process. And basically he studied with the last enlightened Zen master, Master Nan, who their tradition, they really mapped out all the physical transformations that take place as somebody becomes enlightened. And he would say that a lot of what people experience in kind of when they think that they're having a Kundalini awakening is basically like pre-Kundalini. It's like the spine getting ready. That an actual true Kundalini awakening is actually quite rare, because a full Kundalini awakening means that you're enlightened, like at that stage. That's like level 1 of enlightenment is a full-blown Kundalini awakening. So, and they have actually specific practices. So one of the things I learned from him was something called a white skeleton meditation that they practice, that apparently was developed by Buddha himself to accelerate the opening of chi channels. So in this white skeleton meditation, you would actually visualize all of the flesh coming off your body, and then picture your skeleton, and then actually feel your entire skeleton from head to toe, and then feel white light moving through every kind of, atom of your skeleton as vividly as possible. And that clears channels, and basically that is including the spine. It basically helps open up the spine as well. So that's like an accelerated, one of the reasons why it became popular in esoteric Zen and Buddhism is because it's a more rapid way. Like a lot of people's limitations in going to samadhi and into like enlightenment are just that their chi channels are not open enough. They haven't done that kind of preliminary work. And so those kinds of practices can make it easier for you, the physical aspect, to get into samadhi and beyond.
Yeah. Our analogy for this we talk about a lot is that you can't just walk onto the basketball court and start draining 3-pointers, or you can't just pick up the violin and start playing Bach. And so I think it's super good that you point out that there's this sort of baby step process of becoming more and more sensitive, because immediately upon birth, I'll give you the two polarities. You have the one polarity, which is you're born into right away, right into the metropolis, right into the economic machinery, right into stimulus after stimulus. And the other sort of polarity is that you have like the Kogi in Colombia, indigenous of the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta mountain range down there. They have their mamas from birth until 9 years old will live in the cave.
Mm-hmm.
They'll live in the darkness. And so now you see the other polarity, which is no sensory stimuli, only darkness, only what feels like spirit, or what feels like soul or essence, or it. And so the idea is that after the age of 9, when you go out in the world, you're going to be a shaman. You're going to be a master of reality. And so it's important to recognize what you're saying, that there are these experiences where you undergo and it's funny because even science is starting to slowly, as we unpack quantum mechanics, we're starting to, and biochemistry, biophysics, once we start, really unpacking that more and more, you can actually tap your awareness into the tiniest little changes that are occurring on a moment to moment basis, like in your foot, in your knee, in your calf, in your waist.
Yeah.
And then you gain a lot of incredible insight into, like, even pre-trigger, which is usually you get triggered into being like, ow, and then you do it. But you can begin becoming more sensitive so that you can actually pathology, you can make corrections. This is a lot of really important stuff right off the bat. And that makes sense with your trajectory and your journey, that these were kind of the keys. And then you kind of gave us a bit on writing. Did that end up being so how did like, it seems like there's some sort of a coalescing of fields that kind of happened into maybe your like late 20s and figuring that out. So take us there.
I mean, I knew that I didn't want a conventional path, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And somebody handed me a marketing book while I was working on health optimization and working with different supplement companies, kind of at a lower level. And then I realized, like, wow, this is something that I could do basically to be in, have autonomous with my own life and lifestyle and how much money I made and where I lived and all that stuff. I just didn't, I had freedom as a very big value for me. So I was like very reticent to give it up, to be like stuck in an office. So and then I started to see a pathway where I could pursue that and be successful. And I just got really obsessed with it and ended up being really fortunate with mentors. And one of which is the one that I met, that I went to North Carolina with, this guy named Clayton Makepeace. And that's where I met the other kind of student who exposed me to even more kind of meditation and cultivation techniques. And the writing is, what I've loved about it is it's amazing. It's an amazing skill. I mean, it's on a universal skill, it's basically communication.
Yeah.
So, it's opened a lot of doors. Like for me, the first neurofeedback intensive, I did a partial trade with the company where I helped them with their writing and their marketing, and they let me come because those intensives are very expensive. So it's just served me in so many ways. And it's a passion, but it's like the spirituality and the neurofeedback and other things are just increasingly like more of my like mission. It's like, I guess the distinction is meditation and awakening and spirituality is more the mission, and writing is a skill that supports it, the mission. Yeah.
And so then when was it recently that you had the really strong transition to just this vast majority of your attention and focus on neurofeedback and meditation, and beginning to do the quantified self version, which we'll show the graphics of?
Sure. I'd just gotten out of a really long relationship, and I was in an unhealthy space just in terms of ending, but also very addicted to caffeine and stimulants and pushing myself. And I knew I needed to make a shift, and I'd heard about this training called BioCybernaut that is basically like 7 days of alpha training with forgiveness work that you do every day. And you usually do about 4 to 5 hours of neurofeedback a day, and then you work with a therapist when you're not in the neurofeedback, basically to determine what you need to let go of. And the premise of it is that everybody knows forgiveness is powerful. The Bible talks about it. It's very much in pop culture now. But the forgiveness I think that we generally do is more surface. We don't actually release the underlying pain and the underlying resentment that is associated with that resentment. And so as you go deeper into alpha and you do this process that they walk you through, which some of the components are beginning with actually like really feeling the pain as intensely as you can, and being in an alpha state helps you do that because alpha is all about feeling. Alpha is very much connected to the heart. So the more that you feel, the more sensitive you are to that pain. And so you do that, and then you there's some other things that you use for empathy, like you walk in their shoes and you recognize like the gift that came from whatever happened to you that you need to forgive. And then you go in, there's a couple more steps and you let go, and you really actually see in real time, like, because your scores are present for you actually while you're in this dark room and your eyes are closed, but then every 2 minutes the scores will flash on the screen as you do these series of forgivenesses. And so you can see when you let go of something big, all of a sudden the screen lights up and you're like, wow, you really see. And then after they debrief, and you can actually see your alpha improve every session where you just keep forgiving and forgiving and forgiving. And you really ultimately realize, I think we're kind of taught, whether it's directly or indirectly by society, that we shouldn't, it's not just to forgive someone who, if they wronged you in some way, then somehow on some level we're condoning it or sanctioning it, or we're saying that it's okay what they did by forgiving them. And it's that like faulty or that illusory kind of perspective on it that I think causes us to hold that hurt and hold that pain, because once it's happened, there's no virtue. I mean, there's virtue in getting the lesson and evolving in your awareness so that it doesn't happen again, but there's no virtue in holding on to it. And you really see like the beauty of actually letting it go. And the alpha states that you start to experience as you like clear all of these resentments just gets really, really powerful.
There's no beauty in holding on to resentment. There's no virtue in holding on to resentment. That's a great way to put it. There's no moral excellence in holding on to resentment.
No, because it's really what you see. It's in your field. It's in your etheric body. It's in your psyche. It's in your physical body. Like you're actually contracting around that resentment. And I think the Buddha said it's like it's basically like trying to throw a hot coal at someone else. Like you're the one that gets burned. And so by holding on to resentment, we hurt ourselves way more than we think that we're somehow punishing the other person, but it's ignorance. Like we're punishing ourselves by actually holding on to that resentment. So
that's great. The hot coal.
Yeah.
It's true. You just burn yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Like trying to throw a hot coal at somebody. Yeah. So on the neurofeedback level, on the way, so biopsychonaut. Cybernaut.
Biocybernaut.
Yeah.
Biocybernaut. Mm-hmm. So the Biocybernaut program sounds like there's a quite intricate system of taking in the biometrics of the body and then kind of helping the individual get nudged towards letting go of the resentment, towards those alpha states. And then there's the score that flashes. So, there's the feedback that you're getting.
Yeah. So just to paint a picture also, because neurofeedback is essentially like a mirror for your brain. So neurofeedback, we don't, normally I think most people we don't know what our brain is doing, especially on a brainwave level. We definitely don't know. And so what neurofeedback does is give you some sort of feedback. Now, sometimes it can be visual, but a lot of it, especially what I've done, is more auditory, where you're getting a sound depending on if you're producing more of that brainwave. And so it's kind of like becomes a candy for the mind, like a reward system, where it's like the brain sees, oh, if I produce more alpha, I will get more of this sound. And then it starts to it kicks in the brain's kind of self-learning
Yep.
Capacity, where then it's like, oh, more alpha, more sound, more alpha, more sound, and then it just starts to iterate and iterate. And Biocybernaut had these kind of organ-like tones that were really pretty sounding, and they're all in these surround speakers in a room. So as you started to do that, you would just hear this like almost like a organ orchestra play, and you would get more and more sound. And it would be this very rewarding thing to think, oh my God, all of a sudden I'm hearing all of these tones, and if I forgive and I let go of something, I'll get even more tones.
Yes.
So it's rewarding you along the way for.
Yes. So this is very interesting. So it's as though within what we call our chapter 6 in high level perception, the AI coach, that here in this graphic, the idea is that you're not only getting the feedback of the biometrics and the psychometrics and the fusion of the connectomics, which is the neuro, and then the EKG and the microbiome and the metabolomics, and that you're actually getting the small rewards, just like kind of the reinforcement learning agents in their environments, getting the small rewards. And then if you're hearing, the tiny bit more and more of the symphony, let's say, as you're hearing more and more of it, and you're like, whoa, and you're getting to higher and higher states of existence, it's a good way to potentially get people to tap into what Christ consciousness or Buddha consciousness or Lao Tzu Confucius consciousness are. What does it mean to reside in the Tao, or what does it mean for Atman and Brahman to be one, or what does it mean for I and my Father to be one, and what does it mean to have the absolute highest moral or ethical states of being, and how can I get those little rewards along the way that kind of make me baseline. This leads into that point that you brought up when you came, which was that we have these. A lot of us have experienced the atrophy that occurs when we either work out or we can't. After we run. You learned how to run half a marathon, but then, maybe a year later, you have to kind of work your way back up to a half marathon again. And so with states of consciousness, it does feel like there are times that we do kind of atrophy a little bit with the eruptions that may happen. But really, I think the core essence of it is correct, where you and I were talking before we started, which is that once you sort of re-baseline, and in this case it looks like it's something like this. Once you re-baseline from one-dimensional thinking on that left side of the bell curve, and you move yourself maybe towards the center into more multi-dimensional thinking, you're taking multiple variables into account. It's not a binary thing, it's a multiple variables. We're analyzing the complexity. Maybe you're starting to feel a little bit more like maybe you've actually read the Tao Te Ching, or maybe you've read the Old Testament, or maybe you've sat at an Advaita Vedanta retreat, etc. And you begin sort of starting to, when you look at another, you're actually seeing that self, and that then things really start shifting. So that re-baselining, it's basically like you can't actually go back. Like there's no going, like I can't see things in one variable anymore. Everything is multivariate. Everything is nuanced now. Every time that I look at another person, I see a complex soul fusion of their roots and their fruits and their present moment. And so it's upgrading your perception. You can't go back.
Yes. Yeah. You're right. And in neurofeedback, you're literally building new neural pathways and establishing new circuitry. And it's not just, I think we focus a lot with neurofeedback on the brain, but it's really the entire nervous system. It's the body. It's even the biofield. I think one of the the things that I started to discover as I would, like in my second neurofeedback intensive, for example, is like I picked up, so there was no loss, even though I didn't do it for 6 months. I didn't pick up, I didn't do a single second of neurofeedback. But in the second one in particular, I really started to see how much it was beyond the brain, and it really was about the spine and the nervous system. And so I was starting to be able to like use current in my spine to move energy to my brain and then modulate it. And then actually in BioCybernaut, they have those 2-minute periods. So then I could just know that I could rise the energy to my brain, expand kind of infinitely in all directions, and feel, which drives a lot of alpha. And then that energy in the spine could actually hold that state perpetually. Like it wouldn't regress or go back or fluctuate in the same way. And so, it's interesting that what you're saying and everything that you're saying about HLP, applies to inside the brain, the nervous system, the field, the biofield, the field that we're in, the shared field that we're in right now. The more that you access that field, it's hard for that access to go away. It just it becomes part of, there's pathways that open that don't close.
It's so eloquent. Love that that. And they're some of my favorite experiences are those where I'm just re-baselining myself closer and closer towards infinity, eternity, closer and closer towards that infinite consciousness. I love that. Once the journey to God ends, the journey in God begins. That Rupert Spira quote is so good. I love it. Adore him. That's such a good one. And once, what does residing in God or in Tao or realizing that Atman and Brahman are one, what does that begin looking like? Well, it's at, just at an entire, like, in a sense, the vehicle itself becomes just an antenna, like just this receiving station for that frequency of God, of bliss, joy, peace, expanding outward toward that infinite consciousness. It's like being in a Ferrari and versus being in a Model T. Really.
It is.
And now we're adding to continue on the car analogy, we're adding so many sensors and data points on the dashboard now.
Yes.
And so now when you have your AI coach, you have this visualization. It's probably a good time to get into some of the visualizations, but now that you have those, we're really able more and more to gain insight into, now we have a tire pressure sensor. Well, now we have that ability to have an EEG, and actually we're going to show Sensei is one of them that's actually doing it in gamma. Actually, before I want to show this. This is going to be important first. Let's show. All right. So. This is probably okay for now. I mean, there's so many of these on the internet, but just generally speaking, when we talk about brainwaves, we're talking about at the lowest at, what is it, somewhere, it's only a couple hertz. It's less than 1 hertz, right?
Yeah.
Is the delta.
Delta's 1 to 3 typically. I mean, below delta, they call it like slow infralow or slow cortical, but really it's all delta. And delta, is typically associated with sleep. But delta also can be associated with spiritual awakening. Kundalini can activate a lot of delta in the waking state. And delta is really, even some people believe that certain kind of mystical superpowers, like ability to alter reality, could be associated with high degrees of waking delta. So it's a really interesting brainwave. But that's the slowest one that we look at typically.
Okay, and then we go up from there to theta, and then to alpha, and then beta, and then gamma.
Yes.
And it's interesting seeing the 7 chakras on the left in this one, actually. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. I know. I usually look at that. But it's interesting that gamma is at the top, and gamma definitely, in my experience, part of how I modulate gamma is by moving energy through the crown. So gamma definitely seems to be crown dependent. And delta, I would say too, like the energy at the base of the spine, the more that's activated, the more delta you can produce. So yeah, it's interesting. I think it's accurate.
Yeah. And this is an important aspect to that idea of AI coach, that when you have in this sense, this would be kind of like the biometric portion of that AI coach that you need. And specifically, this is usually EEG is what shows us the range of delta to gamma, and you want, on EEG, you want more channels usually to be able to give you more data points where it's being measured from. And then it's complex because you have to do the Fourier transform for digital signal processing. And then that makes it that's a big challenge. But there are algorithms, there are very smart people that made algorithms that enable those transforms of the data to happen. And then you're able to sort of see it visually as something that's actually, that you can understand. And then you can get the neurofeedback in the sense of slowly working yourself into more awakened states. Now, this is a little strange for, we have these images that we're going to show from your. These are specifically from your trials. Yeah. And that I wish it was so simple as that we could just be like, you want to move from here to here. Right, but it's not like that. No. Interesting. So I guess tell us like why it's not like that, and what I mean, because it's interesting because we talk about moving from egoic consciousness to unity consciousness or symphonic consciousness, where you feel the unity and your unique artist contributions, right, kind of thing. But that seems very clear, the direction of that. But it's not like we're going from delta to gamma. No. They're used for different things.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's unpack that.
Yeah, different. They're really, a really good metaphor is like the gears of a car, right? Like there's certain times where you want to be in one gear, and there's other times where you want to be in another gear. If you're wanting to experience like the oneness of all creation in the universe, then like you could shift into the high gear of gamma, and you're like, it's like you're on a rocket ship through the cosmos, and but you don't necessarily want to be there all the time. I mean, I think certain masters get to that point. Like we mentioned Ramana Maharshi, where he had a massive awakening, and I think you get to a certain level of samadhi where you're kind of perpetually in that. And even then, though, I still think he can turn up, like when you read about like stories where he gave people darshan, which is like the look of the guru that blesses someone. That like he could enlighten someone just with his look. And there's reports that like he would actually, everything would still and everything would like there would be something that changes in him and in the person. Like the person would have a massive like mystical experience. So
I love that. I love trying to do that as much as I can with other people. Slowing things down to that level, and then delivering that sort of transmission, unconditional love, infinite consciousness. And then when people look back, and when they, like you said, they are expressing that they've undergone some sort of mystical experience in that short bit of time, that should be a goal. We have that capacity.
And so that's like one gear, but there's times when it's appropriate, like where you might want to do some deeper kind of healing of your unconscious, and that's for theta. That was where theta would be really good. Or maybe you want to manifest something, and so you activate more delta as you're visualizing something that you want to manifest. Or you're expressing joy or gratitude or love, and you want to be in alpha. Or we talked about SMR, which is like between alpha and beta, where it's more like the flow state. Like if you're actually doing an activity like a sport where you need to be super alert, but you also need to be kind of in a more of a zone that's not really thinking. There's no mental chatter. That would be like SMR. So these are just gears that as you kind of master neurofeedback more and more, you can shift your brain intentionally into the right gear for what you want at that moment.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, these gears to shift into. So it could be, in a sense, as though there's more of a, maybe a like there is a binary shift into a gear, but then there's also a synthetic blend between gears and stuff like that.
And you're never just accessing one brainwave at one time, right? It's always like always a sandwich or a composition of a variety of waves too, and that's going to vary. That's why it's really, I think, one of the dangers of getting too obsessed with numbers and all this. And I've done this myself especially because of how the numbers that I've been able to experience, that it doesn't, one person's amplitude on a brainwave like gamma, like, and I've actually seen this, like I could have 50 millivolts of amplitude on gamma, which is like an almost, shouldn't barely be alive kind of amplitude, but then someone else, for them, if they go more above their baseline, like they could have a more ecstatic experience and a more spiritual experience than I would at mine. We all have kind of different propensities, and it's very, very complex. It's not cut and dry like, oh, this much more amplitude or coherence or whatever is better than this. Coherence is generally a better metric than amplitude, because coherence or synchrony is another word. That speaks more to the balance
versus dissonance.
Yes,
you definitely don't want dissonance. You want coherence. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Higher coherence or higher synchrony is almost always better. Higher amplitude sometimes it just means there's a little bit more of like voltage in the system, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's like more of a mystical or profound experience.
Yeah, the Qualia Research Institute team, the Andres Gomez-Emilson and Mike Johnson and those guys, we've had them on the program a lot, and we love their symmetry theory of valence. The more symmetrical, the more coherent, the greater states of valence, the better the valence is. And that's a super interesting idea in the space.
You really want that with the brain, and really that's one of the biggest benefits of gamma training and accessing gamma more and more, to the extent that the person can handle it. We can talk more about that, but gamma unifies the brain. I mean, it's connected to unity consciousness. It's connected to kind of almost like genius level insight that's almost pulling something from the cosmos. And so the more gamma that's accessed, the more the overall brain becomes coherent. And you see this, like, as I started to unlock gamma, all of my synchrony and coherence of all my waves went up. And like the brain map became just much more clear and organized and healthy. So gamma is like this master synchronizer and organizer that you really want to access as much as possible, if you again, to the extent that you've built the right foundation. Because there's a lot of energy in gamma that if your foundation is weaker, it can make you feel a little bit imbalanced or crazy, because it's like running a lot of it would be like flooring a really fast car, but like the alignment of the car is really off, and then everything internally gets more messed up because of all that power, right? So it's like, before you access that amount of power, you really want to make sure everything is aligned.
Foundationally. Yes. It has become more evident as well to me that as I've rebaselined more to these higher states of being, that it feels like a stronger connection, a stronger immersion in that Tao or in that God on a moment-to-moment basis, and that then from there everything else seems to channel itself into place accordingly to be the highest. And it's hard. It's not like every day is absolutely, that's why the whole process of enlightenment is a never-ending process of constant growth. We're always in process. in progress, but it definitely would be helpful to have more neurofeedback, to have more of the data visualization on a moment-to-moment basis. And that, I mean, like, this is a big reason why I chose out of everything that I could have chose to put in that, right there in that bottom left corner where you do the data fusion and then you see what, the peak performance level is. I literally wrote current elevated cortisol, right? And then your recommendation exercise. And so that there's so many different, that's probably the most common, though. The most common way to feel yourself, in a sense, drop out of more of like a bliss or a flow or God state of consciousness is usually when it feels like there's some sort of dissonance happening, some sort of stress is happening, some sort of victim consciousness is happening. Maybe it's resentment, maybe it's ego, maybe it's all these different words that are describing somewhat similar phenomenons, and that those phenomenological states, to basically get a bing, like a that sort of Pavlovian style mechanism that draws you further away from that and more back towards where you were, towards that highest, is it's a really beautiful, and we have to visualize. We have to visualize the data. Let's go through some of the graphics. Okay, so the first graphic we're going to go through is the controlled gamma.
Yeah, and basically the story behind that is, gamma is the black line. After I did the Biocybernaut trainings, I went over to one that was created by Dave Asprey called 40 Years of Zen, which allowed more flexibility in training different waves. And I realized that a lot of the alpha that I was producing in Biocybernaut was actually being driven more by gamma, because gamma and alpha are related. All these brain waves are interrelated. And so all of a sudden it was like, wow, I felt like I had to unlock this, and I could start to using again the energy in the spinal cord, and actually feeling that the energy move through the top of the crown. I developed the ability basically to control how much gamma amplitude I could produce, and then it just kept going up and up and up until it became higher than they had seen before. I'm sure there's been higher, but it was. And what's interesting is like it was controlled in the beginning. I mean, it was controlled, but it was more spiky in the earlier times, but then it became more organized and more consistent, and becomes more efficient over time. So then that's another thing, like we were saying about amplitude. High amplitude is not always desired if it's not efficient. Like if it was taking me a lot of energy to produce that much gamma, and so kind of as I progressed, the amplitude has dropped when I generally train, because I don't need to produce that much, and I can actually do it much more effortlessly, and still be in a mystical state. And so, that's just an example. And really, I think for anybody that wants to produce gamma at home that doesn't have a neurofeedback, I think really just breathing into this, breathing with the whole body from the feet to the crown, and actually feeling current to the best of your ability from the base of your spine, move up through your crown. That will almost always produce more gamma for anybody that wants to do it. And so
slow down and practice that.
Yes. Another thing that connects kind of to all the brain waves, but I think especially alpha and gamma, which I thought it was really interesting when you said you develop like a kind of a notification system when you're in a dissonant state. One of the things that I've observed a lot is that, like, thinking, I saw this in Biocybernaut, thinking generally suppresses alpha, Same with gamma. Anytime there's chatter or there's thinking or that you're engaging with thinking, those waves will go down. But when you're in a state of feeling, they go up. And what's interesting is that I've been pondering this more and more lately. Like, thinking is always, and I'm not the first person to say this.
Totally.
Krishnamurti and a lot of other people said this.
No.
Thinking is rooted in the past. Like, thinking is inherently rooted in the past because there's always a memory component of thinking. You can't think without some dimension of memory. But feeling is actually always in the present, right? You're active. If you're actively feeling, you're in the present moment. So one of the best ways to shift yourself out of the chatter and past rooted thinking mindset that is lower energy and that's quantified lower energy on like a neurofeedback EEG and everything is to just feel as intentionally as possible. And where the kind of the healing or the inner work comes in is that when you really open up the floodgates of feeling, you feel everything. And a lot of the things that you didn't feel before or that you were resisting feeling before or that you buried, those start arising kind of like Pandora's box. And then you've got to feel through everything that arises and feel beyond everything that arises. And then if you succeed at that, your capacity for feeling kind of extends out into the cosmic domain and that's when things become mystical. But it's through feeling. It's not through thinking or any kind of other manipulation, really. Pure feeling is really the ultimate practice.
This is very on point with what has been discussed for a long time, like you were indicating, and that the Einstein quote that I just saw yesterday about intuition being the highest. There's a lot of now scientists and other highly respected physicalists that are affirming some of the spiritual traditions, wisdoms around intuition and around feeling and what that means to also the relationship between the masculine and the feminine as well, which is very interesting. And that there may be also some sort of a synthesis in the sense of the reality that we are in, given it being quantum mechanical and given there being observers that make decisions in the reality, given that there is a intuitive channeling, if you will, of what may be the highest possible decision. Does that feel as though there's a sort of surrender to a intuitive channeling that occurs, that the thinking almost completely silences itself, or does it rise and blend, and is it kind of like those gears of the vehicle? How does that look for you, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, I would say first of all, when I talk about feeling, it's not just, I mean, of course, there's internal feeling, but I'm talking also what I practice in a neurofeedback context and in meditation, and what I've been learning and studying is more of like feeling. It's a process of really feeling beyond. So it's feeling through the body, but feeling beyond the body and feeling everything. So it's like you're feeling out into space, and it's a much more expansive kind of manner of feeling.
Yes.
And that opens, what happens is as that feeling capacity expands, obstructions, that energetic obstructions, like things that are getting in the way of the channel of feeling that you're talking about, those will arise, but then those will be, you feel beyond those, and then those, they burn up. Like, you could call it karma, you could call it blockage, you could call it trauma, whatever you want to do. Like, but if you just keep acknowledging whatever arises, but then continue to not get fixed on it and just to keep feeling beyond it.
Yes.
That feeling capacity, and I think that's the enlightened state is basically a state of infinite feeling. They're able to feel all of existence as one.
Yes.
But feeling is a muscle that we have to we do have to work out and we have to build. And most of us in thinking and feeling are competitive. To answer your question, so it's hard to feel fully if we're engaged in chatter. But if we prioritize feeling, the thinking dominance that I think most of us suffer from, it starts to reduce and reduce and reduce and reduce. And even thinking the energy of thinking, because it's all energy, energy of thinking will begin to merge with the energy of feeling.
Yes.
But it will kind of more just take its rightful place, and thought will arise only as it's needed, not unnecessarily.
Yes.
And then you're able to just stay perpetually in this feeling of love, bliss, which is like consciousness or reality itself.
Yes.
Which is what masters like Adida and many others say. And that, that kind of, it resolves a lot, I think, of the issues of that thinking. But I think we have to recognize that the kind of war that I don't love the war metaphor always, because it's like it implies a fight or an enemy. But there is we're kind of perpetually in a tug of war of like the mind pulling us into kind of this contracted, obsessive, small, energetically kind of, always spinning, always chasing, always running, suffering, versus the feeling state of the heart, which is the opposite of that. And it's a different awareness, and it's a different energy and a different attention. And the more we prioritize the feeling and keep giving energy to feeling as a practice, moment to moment, and as an intensified practice in neurofeedback, the faster we awaken.
So we'll get to the other examples. This is so juicy that there's just so much here. So the ultimate states of being feel the whole. And by the whole, we mean everything. We mean holism, everything, God, unity.
All of existence.
All of existence. The ultimate states feel all of existence. Feel all of existence, not think. Feel all of existence.
Yes.
And then once we sort of re-baseline ourselves more and more to feeling all of existence, feeling the whole, right? The way that we sort of have been perpetually trying to help bring it to people's consciousness is through the magic trick graphic, right, of chapter 8, because you don't just exist in your little square box around your head, but you exist as part of this entire process from Big Bang until you contemplating what reality is. And so to see it at that whole level, and that this is just one song, one universe, and that we may in fact be there's many more that consciousness is exploring infinity. So the more that we baseline ourselves to feeling the unity, feeling the whole, the more that we, would you say, become surrendered to the right thought coming when it comes.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. There's an efficiency, I think, of thought where we're not thinking. I think most of our thoughts that we tend to think are not really, they don't serve us. They're just chatter, or they're negative thoughts, or whatever they are.
Yes.
They're worry. And yeah, I think in the enlightened state, which I'm not there yet, but I think I see a progression, or I see kind of a pathway towards.
Me too. Yeah.
Where there's less and less of that sort of thinking, and there's more and more space between thoughts.
Yes.
And there's more feeling capacity that's building, and the ability to be in that feeling, kind of heart feeling state more perpetually. And then thought, I mean, another way to look at it, the chiropractor that I mentioned, Donnie Epstein, the one that developed network spinal analysis, he said that the thoughts that we have, like especially the ones that we're talking about in particular, they're not really ours. They're actually just a reflection of the level of energy that we're accessing through the field at that particular moment.
Yeah, interesting.
And so if you actually raise your access to the field and raise your energy, the thoughts immediately change.
Yes.
And that's why it's so silly to even interact with our thoughts most of the time, because it's like a dog chasing its tail, right? Like you're just going to go around in a circle. But if you actually raise your level of energy in that moment and access more of the field, and how you do that is through feeling that, exercising that feeling capacity. Energy goes up and the thoughts immediately change, and then the thoughts that you had a moment ago they're no longer even there anymore, so of course they're not a problem.
So there's the box. I'm a fan of explaining it through the graphic here on identity and porosity, that if you're in the box on the right and you're like the dog chasing its tail with thought, versus if you're like on the left where you have this extremely high level of porosity, like you're basically a perforated beingness with existence, your level of energetic connection to what is occurring is at higher levels, and there, like you said, there's more space between thoughts. That's a really important one. Actually, that's probably one of the most famous ones of Buddhism, is that you spend less time reacting and more time just cognizing, just being present rather than reacting, and less time dwelling in that aversion or craving, and there's just more just being. And then when you rebaseline away from just that incessant dog chasing its tail, you're accessing higher levels of energy. The higher levels of energy that you're accessing, the more and more over time that the right thoughts are coming, the ones that serve the highest are coming. So then is it a co-creative relationship though, so that the individual consciousness, that individual, the seemingly individual, the nerve ending, if you will, of the whole, that nerve ending has a relationship of choice. It has a relationship of seeing the incessant thought versus seeing the higher states of being, where it is more intuitive, more feeling, more expansive. To you there's still a choice?
I think so. There's the level of wisdom. I think there's an inherent wisdom in that awareness at that stage, where it's like it sees the thought for what it is, and then there's no identification with that thought. There's usually there's no problem with thought. It's the identification with the thought that usually gets us in trouble, because it takes us down that rabbit hole, or the dog chasing its tail kind of metaphor, where as soon as we think the thought is mine, and then it's a problem, and then I've got to do something, and I've got to fix it, then you're sucked in, and then you're just going around and around in circles. But to your point about choice, if you actually see it for what it is, and that it's not really yours, then there's a choice to not give it any attention.
Yeah.
And to direct attention elsewhere that's more expansive and in the direction of awakening.
Okay. So then once one gets into greater and greater states of feeling the whole and being immersed in that process, intuitive thought rather than the dog chasing its tail, that when one is asked from a non-dual state of experience if they would prefer coffee or tea, what occurs?
I mean, it's interesting because you read these stories. I mean, I'm not at that stage, but you read these stories about masters who've completely transcended their ego, and they still have, I don't know, they somehow still manage to have preferences and to make choices and to do different, and there's Nisakar, I can never say his name, but he smoked a lot of cigarettes, or like, Ramana Maharshi, he would have his idiosyncrasies. Like there's still, or every spiritual master, I think some element of the personality, like Hawkins, he talks about we're all kind of karmic wind-up toys, right? Like you can become awakened, but that wind-up toy is still going to kind of like do its things. It's in the world.
Oh, that's funny. That's really funny. Yeah.
So even after you're enlightened, and you've transcended kind of karma in the sense of birth and death, like you still have a human body, that brain that it's going to have its tendencies. Yeah,
you have 4.5 billion years of evolutionary lineage inside of you, and on a planetary level, and 3.5 billion on a cellular evolutionary level, and that there's so much of that sort of a priori filtration that's been built up through that evolutionary lens of a decision towards some sort of a reward function, and all of this wind-up toy habits and behaviors, and the familial epigenetics and everything that's just been like handed to you lineage-wise. And so it's a wind-up toy. Even that's funny. That's a really good way to put it. Even if you're attaining non-dual states, there's still some wind-up toy action.
Yeah.
It's you're still getting that. Yeah. Wow. That's probably one of my favorite topics on consciousness, is that non-duality is beautiful, and it reminds me a lot of the person that attains some sort of spiritual ascent on a mountaintop. And then what I hypothesize can potentially be beyond that is the non-duality with the symphonic. So the symphony is the non-duality, but the individual artists, the nerve endings inside of that symphony are playing different wind-up melodies and instruments and things like that. And so that's when the master that went on the spiritual ascent to the mountain and attained some non-dual gnosis of the symphony ends up coming down to the metro, to the civilization, and anchoring the wisdoms in the beingness of everything that is happening, so that there is this butterfly effect that happens to others that we were mentioning earlier, when you can slow things down to that level, to where you can package that tiny bit of unconditional love, that God that someone else feels, and then they have a spiritual experience, a mystic experience that they take with them everywhere they go and whatnot afterward. So I feel that there's a co-creative process with the melody that I play and the instrument that I play. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I love that. I saw that on another one of your podcasts, and I think it's an amazing metaphor, because like you said, even when you become enlightened, you're still an instrument in this greater whole. Like you have some element, as long as you're in a body, you have some element of individuality, right? That is that instrumentation. And then you recognize, I think one of the things though, the trademarks of enlightenment is that you can see the instrument, the unique instrument that everyone else in existence is playing, and you respect that and you honor that, and you have reference for that. So there's no better or worse or good or bad. Everyone is playing this, kind of simultaneously playing an instrument.
Yes.
That is part of this grand song of existence.
Yeah, the way that we've been talking about it's so spot on. The way that we've been talking about it is that there is this within the symphony. There's a beauty to feeling the whole of the symphony and just holding that and being in it. That's the master residing in the Tao, as Lao Tzu would say. That is that, and that when you reside there, then that's where the whole Wu Wei phenomenon occurs as well. The effortless action phenomenon occurs, where everything that you do is from that perspective. And so there is no choice of malevolence that occurs, because everything is from that gnosis, that knowing of the whole of the other is the self, and that we have that as a foundational pillar point. And yet there's also within the symphony, there's also not only that truth that the whole symphony is the truth, and that the symphony is occurring, and that there's that truth that kind of transcends the yin yang, but then the yin yang itself is still happening, which is you see somebody that is, still killing somebody else, or violent or tyrannical or dictatorial or blah blah blah, and that all of those examples that are far left on the bell curve on the evolution of consciousness that are still malevolent, that those are bad. And so that's in the yin-yang vision of it, is that those are bad. We are moving away from those towards the good, which is the bliss, joy, love, maximizing potential of everybody. But then the truth is that it's all that symphony that's unfolding. And so, yeah, we just did that one again like 2 nights ago, that graphic. Yeah, it's funny. I should start keeping the most recent show graphics more near me, so I can just pull them up instead of drawing them every single time, because I've moved it away. So yeah, so that is probably, even if you get, let's say, even if you get to your feelings of infinity, unity, holism, you get to those feelings, and then you intuitively feel that thought arise of that you prefer the tea or the coffee and the wind-up toy, or that that you get the message if you would like to go to this event, and you get the intuitive yes or no. Do you have a preference for how much of that is your quote call, your artist's choice to to do some vibrato there or not?
I mean, I would say that I have less I don't know. I think I become less attached to my likes and dislikes. I still have them though, I think. I get, it's a progression, and I think an enlightenment really, like, they become minimized, but they're still, even then, we just talked about, they exist. So yeah, I mean, I think though, noticing the intensity of, like, one of the signs of spiritual progress would be to notice a reduction, like, in the intensity of preference.
Yes.
Because if your state is kind of if you're in a natural state of joy, then, like, getting your preference or not getting your preference isn't going to necessarily give you any more joy than you already are, right? Than you already have. Yes. So most people are operating not from a baseline level of joy, under the assumption that if they get their preference, they will get more joy.
Yeah.
And if they don't get their preference, then they'll
less joy.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. So I think that's the shift that starts to occur.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then I would also asterisk that with if on one of the choices is the suffering of actually having violence occur against you, or on the other side is not having a baseball bat swung against my knee or whatever. That's natural instinct. Yeah. But tea or coffee or going to an event or not.
Yeah.
There's not as much. Yeah. I'm baseline joy, period. Yeah. Yeah. That type of mentality. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think that's not something we can talk ourselves into. That's one of the things I think like a lot of positive thinking in that movement, it doesn't. I think it's kind of a sort of reprogramming that can be helpful for people. But I think one of the things that you see in neurofeedback and in gamma training in particular is like there is this baseline level of joy that just arises in high gamma. That then as you're able to maintain gamma effortlessly, like that baseline state of joy that is physiological and is energetic and is like it's just part of your nature. That's what I would notice a lot in my peak of gamma experiences, that like this ecstatic joy or love is like, this is actually my real, like who I thought I was is not who I am, and this ecstatic just being is my real nature. And therefore but like it's not something that again you can't positive think your way to that. It's an energetic alchemy and kind of a transformation that has to occur on a nervous system level and etheric, brain, neurological, like all these different levels and systems that are interrelated, I think. And that's again though the advantage of this kind of work and why I'm so passionate about getting it out to more people and sharing it. Yeah, the gnosis must be anchored in the vehicle, and it must be anchored in the heart, and it must be not kept in the box inside of the head. And that the more that we do that, the more that it actually firmly becomes our essence, our smell, of our flower. I want us to do, as we get into the other two images, what I want us to do quick is I want us to do another small, quick breakdown. Will you run us through? We did gamma.
Yeah.
And in gamma, we talked a lot about that peak. We talked a lot about that God or unity state, that type of state. And then we talked in this sort of, a lot of the time we hear something like you said, a flow state, and that's between an alpha and a beta. Mm-hmm. And so then you have this sort of flow state, and then you have what would be another common, what is the common, or is there a common state of when I'm doing a car driving or a dishwashing or is there a common, and if so, can I make that gamma? Can I be washing my dishes and feel God while I'm washing my dishes? That type of thing. Many artists have tried, making that in their artwork and expressing that in the most mundane thing you can feel unity. Yeah.
Yeah, I think generally people spend, 80, 90% of or more, like a huge amount of I don't know the exact stat, but they spend a lot of their time, too much time in beta, which is more like fight or flight, or just more like baseline level of kind of wakefulness. But there's nothing particularly energized or special about it. It's just like you said, it's, and to your point, yes. Like in terms of studies, like on monks, you can get to the point where you can be in higher gamma kind of throughout the day and functional even in sleep. And and so you can be more in that, like the portal can be basically open all the time.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is possible. But I think there's also an evolution to that, because as I've gone really deeper and deeper into, I mean, as you accelerate gamma training, there's a lot of it's like running a lot more current that through a wire than the wire can initially handle. And so you'll get a lot of shaking, like shaking in your hands, shaking in your limbs, shaking in your spine, your head, because it's almost like the energy is basically opening up these new pathways, and it's almost like plowing through any blockages or obstruction and basically like widening the nerves so that it can handle this increased energy and circuitry. And so you don't want to, you kind of have to like go do that process a little bit slower, because you can overwhelm your system if you're just like you wouldn't want to be in that state all day long. You might fry out, your nervous system will fry out, or you might have anxiety or something. So you have to kind of ease your way into opening. And then I think, but eventually as all that circuitry is open and it's no longer an effort for you to be running that much current, it's no longer shaking your system and, difficult on your system, then I think that possibility exists where you can just be in the awakened state all the time.
Yes. Yeah, beautiful. So we're looking at what could be something like, if we were to visualize the dashboards of our biometrics, psychometrics, the big data fusion, that out of the 8 billion of us or so, that the most of us are spending time in beta states of, could we say, some sort of an more autopilot style
Yes,
mode?
absolutely. Yeah.
Like, I'm getting through dishwashing so I can get to what will hopefully bring me more joy.
Mm-hmm.
Is that potentially description?
Yeah. And it's kind of one mundane thing to the next. Like
one mundane thing next.
Yeah. Dishwashing to TV to phone to email or whatever it happens to be. But there's not a lot of transcendental access into the typical state.
And does it look a little bit like when beta begins experiencing, like, you know how sometimes people say that when you, like, a grandparent will have their heart melt a little bit, like especially like a grandpa that has maybe been a little bit like intense in life, and then like his son or daughter has a child, and so he gets a grandchild.
Yeah.
And like that kind of brings them maybe from a more like beta into an alpha state. So is that right? Does it slow them down a little bit, and it brings them into that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a lot of what's so healing about something like what we experience at BioCybernaut. I think is a lot of the buildup of emotion and resentment. It keeps us in that beta, like excess beta state perpetually, and we never, because like some of the slower waves are very rejuvenating on a deeper level. And so but to access them, we have to actually clear the tension and the resentment and those underlying unresolved emotions and traumas that are keeping us in that fight or flight state. Because you can meditate, and I think it's valuable to do any sort of or just try to do some kind of relaxation technique, but then generally you'll kind of go back after you go through the relaxation, you'll go back to fight your default fight or flight, which is a reflection of like what's unresolved within. So for kind of more permanent access to these slower and more rejuvenative states, the work has to be done.
Yes. So would it be fair then to say that the transcendent states beyond the moving from mundane to mundane in beta autopilot, that would it be fair to say something like we simultaneously slow into more alpha in that example of, when you get the baby, and you're like, oh my gosh, I have so many people that have just slowed down due to that process, which is super interesting, right? That transcendental realization. And then we go even slower into theta states. Maybe that's when there's a profound realization of the person that you're falling in love with, or that. So there's maybe there are these ways to achieve these slower states that are not even, maybe meditation oriented. But again, meditation isn't something we do, it's what we are. Again, that's another Rupert Spira phrase, right?
Yeah,
But so there's a simultaneous, in a sense, descent that occurs with our slower brainwave frequencies. And then there's also an ascent beyond beta into the gamma. So then is that about right, that there's a transcendent way down and a transcendent way up? And what there is. And I think that's something that is hard to explain. I don't know, because I had a friend ask me about that recently too, and it's it's weird that you can be transcendent kind of on both ends of the spectrum. It's cool.
Yeah. I think, and sometimes too what happens is you slow way down, and then that super slow down ignites Kundalini, and then that kind of goes, then it goes up to gamma, and then gamma gets accessed, and then sometimes for some people, you can go more straight to gamma, and then the other ones, the slower waves, will be brought up. So I think ultimately there's kind of a merging of the top and the bottom.
Yep.
But like where you start, I think it depends on a person's kind of proclivity and their tendencies and everything. Yeah. So.
Okay, so let's put it this way also. Would it potentially be fair to say something like that this most baseline beta is potentially where humans kind of enter into the portal of awareness, like, boom, like you're in beta state when you're your moment to moment existence. Of course it's different. Some people become enlightened at very young ages. They don't even spend that much time in beta. The point being is you enter into, let's say, the reality, and you enter in at beta, let's say, and then from there, then you can go either way from that, which end up being kind of the same thing, which is transcendent states of gamma or of the alpha, theta, deltas. And deltas, in a sense, are the ones that are typically talked about with sleep. And so sleep is another sort of that you merge into the ocean. You are unity consciousness in that ocean. That's another way of seeing it. So you portal into reality at beta, and then from there you can, you have that gamma. Actually, the gamma to me is to me it feels like it's a very, that God presence. It can feel like it's something that's a little bit more higher frequency, but to me, it also does feel a little bit delta with extreme slow. Yeah. This is very interesting. Yeah,
and I think there's a really interesting, like, unexplored relationship between delta and gamma in the awakening process that I would love to dive deeper in. I've seen, in my case, for example, I can do gamma training, and I will, if I close my eyes, like, my gamma will rise, my energy will rise through my spine to my crown, and that's my default at this moment. But if I open my eyes and actually do like an open-eyed meditation, somehow, even with the gamma feedback, my delta will spike. And some of what I showed you, the delta chart that was like super high, where it was like off the chart, that was actually training in gamma. So it had gamma feedback, but my eyes were open, and somehow the energy was different with my eyes open and what was going on with my neurology, and the meditation that I was doing that was activating. And I think I forget what they call it, like Ramana and other mystics have talked about this. In Kundalini, you got the root and then it rises to the crown, and that's there's like a certain term for that part.
Is it like a torus in a sense?
Yeah, and exactly, and yeah, but that energy at the root has to rise to the crown for this like certain level of realization. And I think even on this chart that you showed, like delta is at the root and gamma is at the crown, so there is some kind of connection between delta and gamma coming together.
Oh my gosh, should we just literally just connect the circle basically?
Yeah,
that's kind of interesting. It's like a circle being. It's like a line that we're folding into a circle. Yeah. So. And the transcendent is potentially that delta or that gamma. Yeah. Would you say that when you're in a more, if you're feeling some sort of more divine states, doing what is seemingly mundane activities, is that the more of a descent into like alpha and theta, or is that more of an ascent into the gamma?
I would say it's probably, I mean, I think for most people, gamma is not going to be functional in terms of being in the world. Like,
interesting.
So it's going to be more of the slower. I think more people are going to be able to function.
I see.
In a slower.
That's very interesting.
Because high gamma, before your nervous system is acclimated to it, is a little bit like having a seizure.
Yeah.
You're like this, and then it normalizes, and it kind of like your nervous system is like, oh, this is not a threat, and then it calms, and then the current moves through more smoothly, and the channel is open, and then you can access other, like in one of the charts that we were looking at, like I'm able to keep my gamma steady, but not at a level that's like too much shake or uncomfortable. It's like a high gamma, but it's sustainable for me because of how my system has evolved. And then I'm actually able to focus more on the heart simultaneously, which increases the alpha.
Interesting.
And so then sometimes my alpha even would come above gamma because I'm just like focusing on this heart radiance, and there's like this ecstatic joy or love that's pouring in while that kind of gamma state is being held.
Yes.
So you can kind of start to kind of merge a lot of these states too, where like your delta's activated, your alpha's feeling and through your heart, your gammas, you've got current coming through. It's like, it can get really trippy because there's levels of sophistication that are
and interesting. So we're never experiencing just one. We're experiencing all five in different dosages. So let's go look at what I think was the one. Were you just talking about this one? Yeah,
that one. So it's like gamma. I mean, it's a little bursty, but it's relatively steady in terms of like how gamma is the black line all the way across. But then the alpha is actually, which is like the heart feeling is really high and spiking and those are that producing that much alpha, especially in the midst of gamma, is you just feel like ecstasy.
So alpha is known as the heart.
Yeah, it's connected
frequency? Connected to heart frequency.
Yeah.
And just to look at this again, you're saying that the so delta, theta, alpha, beta, and gamma are all being represented in some quantities, all at the same time.
Yeah.
And so in this case, what would be what are we saying about the quantities in this case? Is that do you know what the 12 and the 25 are?
That's unique to that system. So it doesn't, those are very high numbers, but it's, they don't translate into kind of universal, they don't translate into kind of a universal measurement because every neurofeedback system kind of has its own system. But in a typical person, if they were doing really well, might produce like 5 or 10 mil on that scale. So that's like to go to 40 or 30 or 40 is like
really high.
Is very high. And I'm doing these actually too. Typically in neurofeedback training is like you're sitting in a chair, but as I got my system at home, I started doing it cross-legged, basically.
Yes.
So just doing it in full
Yes.
meditation posture.
Is it also fair to say that the entirety of the consciousness moves in a direction? Because it looks as though the alpha, the gamma, and the beta are all moving on a peak, and they're all moving on the trough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so
Yeah.
they are moving cohesively.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but then there's also the scenarios where you have this, and so this.
Yes.
This example, this one does not move cohesively. This is, delta
Yeah.
is skyrocketed. It
Yeah.
looks like someone's asleep.
Yeah, but I'm awake,
You're
and
wide awake.
I'm doing wide awake. So I'm and that was the meditation, the Ramana Maharshi meditation that I told you, where I would just like gaze at the picture and feel into his state, and my delta would skyrocket. And at first, it was so high that I didn't think it was real. But I spoke to a doctor, and he was like, "Yeah, because it's the way that it's not. Because sometimes you get noise in neurofeedback, or like artifacting, like if you're moving or there's something else going on, you're blinking too much. But I was like, no, I feel pretty still, and I checked with him, and it was true. And so but I think it's all what I could describe in that experience was just like a massive amount of like spinal activity and energy, and then this feeling just the feeling into the state of a realized. I mean, that's one of the most powerful things that we can do.
Yes.
That's another interesting technique, is to actually you take a picture of any enlightened being that you're drawn to, and actually just feel into their, like through your heart, through your body, through your nervous system, feel into their state, and like feel what that state is or feels like. And I think that there's something really magical. It's like we're, I don't know, it's hard to put it into words, and it's going to sound very woo-woo, but like we're given, I think it's one of the gifts that the divine gave to us, and through these living, realized beings, is that their states are transmittable in person, but not only that, but also through their voice, through their image. And so by actually meditating and connecting with that and feeling into that, then we have access to those, and those can begin to transfer to us.
Yes.
And you see that a lot in India. Like there's a lot of devotion to puja and to deities and to pictures of gurus and everything. It's a powerful practice.
Yeah, this is extremely spot on. That one of the most common ways to sort of trigger yourself into state is a feeling of unity, is to have that little shrine of your preferred master that has attained such incredible states prior to you, and that it helps that process a lot. And so does this normally look the same way as with the high delta? Is that normally what a sleep looks like, or what does
I'd be interested. I don't know what sleep would look like on this system, so it's hard for me to say.
I see.
But I'm not sure how much delta would be above the other waves in sleep. That's a good question.
What's the system called? What's this one?
Cygnet system.
Cygnet.
Yeah, CYGNET.
CYGNET. And then is this online software that you can just download?
It requires a special amplifier that is pretty pricey. It's like $5,000-$6,000, and you have to be working with a practitioner basically to access it. So it's not
but we're democratizing.
Yes.
And I guess we can give the example.
Yes, there's more accessible neurofeedback technologies coming.
So so the existing one that people are really familiar with is Muse. And that's only like $200 or something.
Yeah.
But that only has a couple channels on it, and you said alpha is the only thing that it really measures quite well.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it's just not. It's nowhere approaching kind of clinical level of anything really. I mean, I think for some people, just a calming effect can be helpful, but
Yeah.
in terms of like really true neurofeedback, there's just not enough channels. There's not the right feedback. There's not the right level of sensitivity. The channel, I think the placement even of the channels or the electrodes or the sensors are not optimum. But yeah, there's been a dilemma in the neurofeedback space that like you either had to use these really expensive professional systems or these consumer like kind of devices that didn't really do anything. But I am really excited about this one that you have.
Yeah, let's do
up
it. Let's
here.
show it. Okay. Sensei.
It won't be ready until next year, but I've had a lot of dialogue with the company, and their founders, and they're amazing people, and they've really cracked the code on how to create professional grade sensitivity and accuracy, including of gamma, which is very difficult to do, and to do it in a dry headset that doesn't have any wires. So just for context, for most people, like with neurofeedback, you usually have to put these electrodes on your head. You have to put kind of a gel it's like a glue. It's very sticky. It's hard to wash off. It sticks in your hair. And
that's for conduction.
Yeah, it's conduction. And even placing those electrodes is a pain, and then taking them off. And then you've got to have this special laptop that has all of this power that has an amplifier. It's a whole ordeal. It's not convenient at all. And so there's a reason why nobody does it at home, the pricing, the inconvenience. But basically this device solves all of that and lets you train gamma and then the other brainwaves too, which, Muse only does like alpha, but they'll do theta, they can do delta, they can do SMR, they can do even other technologies, HRV and photobiomodulation.
Yeah.
That will assist the brain and assist the kind of the stability. And what we were talking about before too is that it's adaptive. So they're building in not only gamification of their app and like progressions and programs into their sequence, but also they'll have AI and machine learning that will basically look at your data that comes in and then alter your program so that you're training on the right track for you. So it's kind of like
personalization.
It's great to still have a practitioner. Nothing will take the place of a world-class practitioner, but in order, it's the closest thing to having guidance and moving you along the track. So and it will be you just put it on, you sync it to your phone, and you get training, and it'll be below $1,000. I think below even $700 or $800. So
that'd be great.
It's to make a device like this that's so far ahead of the market and where the market's been, definitely takes a lot of innovation and production and everything. So it's looking like towards the end of next year, but I would recommend anybody goes to their list, because I think that they're going to have a lot of interest and a lot of demand, and you can get updates by joining their list. I'm not, I have nothing to promote here today, but I'm a big believer in terms of, we've talked a lot about neurofeedback, but a technology, as technologies that can transform humanity, if we could get millions of people doing this foundational kind of training and then progressing their way to gamma, and then doing gamma and doing these programs and optimizing, like a million people doing that, we'd have a different world, because
that's right.
As humanity, individuals raise in consciousness, it's exponential, right? Like through David Hawkins, he talks about that. One person going up 100 points in their level of consciousness is like counterbalances the negativity of many, many, many more people. Like just like one enlightened being can counterbalance the negativity of hundreds of millions, if not a billion people. And so a lot of the world that we're in right now and the problems that we have are just a reflection of the level of consciousness of
100%
the masses. And if a portion of even just a small portion of the masses rise in consciousness, we have a different world.
Yes. Yeah. Reality is 100% a reflection of our consciousness. And the more awake we become, the more divine the social fabric becomes, the more we all maximize our flourishing, and we move away from malevolence and violence. So it's just a reflection of our consciousness, our level of consciousness. And so the democratization of neurofeedback tools is paramount to elevate our consciousness. It may be paramount. I mean, it's probably very, very high up. It's probably one of the most crucial things. And I think that, when you get to the level of higher levels of sophistication of sensor technology, the fusion of that data, the machine learning and AI algorithms to do the digital signal processing and to send the nudges that we were talking about over to people. I mean, yeah, we can definitely more rapidly catalyze that awakening. So yeah, it's gorgeous. I'm a huge fan, and I'm glad we got to show that too. So I also want to say that for those that want to also follow Anthony, he had the links in the bio below to his Instagram account, Poetry by Anthony. But yeah, if you go look at his account, you'll see that he has Poetry by Anthony, again, on Instagram. He has a ridiculous amount of really, really insightful quotes that he writes on typewriter.
Yes.
Yeah, which is very cool that it's OG like that. I love it. And they're really nice. They're really insightful. Highly recommend checking those out, guys. And then let's see here. We kind of got through a lot of our points. I mean, one of the other really nice things is that it's a psychotherapeutic. So neurofeedback is psychotherapeutic. So as you elevate your states of consciousness, you're no longer immersing yourself in those traumas where you click the rewind button incessantly and you go and you replay all of the horrid and when you butterfly effect outward, you butterfly effect out that positivity and that light bliss consciousness to your family and the community and the world. So I'd love
to come back and do maybe one where somehow we could do this, but like we both experience neurofeedback or like demonstrate it or show what's going on, and like you can wire up and do some different waves, and then we can kind of see what's going on. We talk about your experience. I think it'd be really interesting, because I think for a lot of people it's still a little bit more abstract, but I think actually seeing your experience and seeing my experience, so you could be someone else.
Agreed.
It would be a fantastic way if we do.
Round 2 with Anthony will be demo and unpacking the nuances of our experiences on the demo. That'll be a really good idea. Yeah. And it'll hopefully make it more relatable, and hopefully the democratization is so damn important. There's so many other sort of correlates of awakening too. The neurofeedback's important. HRV is a really interesting one. Having higher HRV is less stressful. More HRV is more stressful, or less HRV is more stressful. So you really want to, you more relaxed states of consciousness, you have higher heart rate variability. If you're gonna be stressed, you're gonna be like just very on the same, you're in that mode where you have to be mode, and that can maybe neurofeedback show that it's more of a beta maybe state. And then I don't know what yet with the microbiome. That's one of my sort of favorite ones to try and figure out, but I don't know what the states of enlightenment are for the, we have 2,000. We have 1,000 species of bacteria that each have 2,000 genes. So that's crazy. So that's 2 million genetic expression, and that's 100x the human genetic expression. So so
I know a good person actually that I think would have a really. I'm not an expert on the microbiome, but she's super knowledgeable. She's a PhD cancer researcher, but super deep into microbiome and mitochondria. And
that's cool.
All of these things, and I think.
What's her name?
Her name's Shauna.
Shauna.
Yeah, I'll introduce you. She'll be
shout out. Shout out Shauna, and we'd love to have you on the program. Let's do it. That'd be great.
Yeah, I think she'd be a really good guest.
I love people that are super deep in those like weeds of specific science,
specific things. I've learned so much just in a few conversations with her.
Yeah.
And I'm into biohacking, but like people, there's people. It's really eye opening to see people are just like how to stack things like NAD and all.
What's that mean again?
NAD is I forget what it even stands for, but it basically is like a reboot for your mitochondria.
It's that's cool. That's really cool.
It's a really powerful, and she worked in a clinic and she kind of understands, like, I didn't even know, for example, that you have like different mitochondria types.
That's right.
And that, like,
how many are there? Do you remember?
I forget, but there's more. Yeah. I mean,
bioenergetics. Yeah.
Yeah. There's this whole thing. So I'm still learning in that. And for me, just to bring it around like full circle, the more energized the body is, I think the more, the better you're able to, the more progress you can make on meditation. It's hard to make, a sick body, it's not as good a meditation, right? But if you're really healthy and vital and you can be really energized on a cellular level, you have more prana, that can then be moved and activated in ways that kind of accelerates awakening. So the physical practices do help as well. And I think, there's always been yoga and diet and all of that stuff, and those are powerful fundamental: sunshine, clean air, water. But I think we're emerging into this space where there's all these nutrients and biohacking and technologies, some like neurofeedback that are exogenous and kind of just help amplify what's going on in the brain or in the nervous system. But then there's some, there's endogenous things, substances that you can take. Because you interviewed like Dr. Ted, for example, right? And he's working on a lot of...
Dr. Ted Achacoso, for those that want to go watch that episode, it's a super fantastic one.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. So there's a lot of things that will... substances and nutrients and different things that can potentially help the awakening process in the body, help the meditation process in the body. So it's... we're really I mean, it's an exciting time that we're on this like trailblazing cutting edge of really... a whole new science. I think as science and spirituality are kind of merging more.
They are. Amen. Yeah, exactly. Yep. And hopefully the example that we were talking about kind of before we started was that we were trying to analogize the microbiome in a sense to also like the connectome of the brain or of your brain waves that you're analyzing, because it's potentially that even if somebody does go and experience gamma and that maybe their temperament and maybe that maybe it is to be in maybe a more beta state, so maybe the quote like living in the Tao can be not only like gamma but it can be beta to certain, that's kind of interesting too.
There's a lot of relativity too.
Relativity, which is that's kind of a strange thing too to sort of say, like, can you be in beta and be in unity consciousness or something like that? Is that possible?
Probably.
Yeah. And so these are the interesting questions. This is like when we're perpetual kindergarten, as I love to say. Yeah. I mean, wow. Okay, I have, let's see. There's really not that much left. I mean, because we basically talked about consciousness this entire... So I love to ask people a question about what they think the nature of consciousness is. So what do you think it is?
Consciousness is... This is not my... I mean, I agree with this... Consciousness is reality itself. Consciousness is all existing, all pervading, all present, love, bliss, that is all of reality, but also pervades all of reality, I guess. I don't know. That's how I perceive it. But pure consciousness is love, bliss, that's God, you know, and everything that exists through it is everything, it exists through everything, and that's what we're waking up to.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Our answers on the show to the question range from, someone saying that it's subjective storytelling, or someone saying that it's connections, or someone saying that it's infinite consciousness, love, bliss. That is the baseline, is that love, bliss, and that it's Rumi quote. You go around from room to room looking for the diamond necklace that is around your neck.
Yeah.
I love asking the question to capture the perspective of the nerve ending about the reality that it's in. It's nice, and it's good getting I definitely agree with all of these different answers. It's so interesting because my nerve ending agrees with the nerve ending's perspectives about consciousness. It's because and you see where subjective storytelling is interesting and true in its way, and that connections are interesting and true in their way, and the infinite love, light, bliss is true in its way. That one seems definitely most fundamental. Most fundamental. That's why Sat Chit Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss, is, think about the words: existence, consciousness, okay, bliss. That's yeah. And another thing on that, just because I know that this will help the process for processing that information for people, is one of the most interesting aspects to existence, consciousness, bliss is the fact of, when you look at, this is in High Level Perception Chapter 6, the Biometrics of Awakening section, that when you're in here and you're looking at the classical wealth hierarchy, which is usually the only way that we portray the hierarchy of 8 billion people on the planet, that you have the classic international poverty at the bottom, and then you have the global middle class, the 225,000 ultra high net worth, and then the 2,200 billionaires. And then there's a little question mark around the enlightened sages, because you don't know, sometimes they may have no money, sometimes they do have money. And then on the enlightenment hierarchy on the right, you see the enlightened sages at the top. And then in the bubble where you don't know where the billionaires or the ultra high net worth or the middle class or the international poverty are. And what's super interesting about that right side is that you may actually have some of the planet's most wealthiest people that are in the most egoic states of consciousness, and that you might have some of the poorest people on the planet in some of the most enlightened states of consciousness. And then you wonder, well, what about Maslow's hierarchy of needs? What about the basic needs? What if, how is it possible that someone that's so primal because they don't have access to clean water, how can they be existence, consciousness, bliss?
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's such a common archetype.
Sure, yeah.
Rich people being miserable, poor people being happy, but also poor people being miserable because they don't have basic needs met, and rich people being happy because they don't have to worry about their basic needs.
Yeah, it all comes back to consciousness.
What an enigma. What an enigma, bro. That one is, and it all comes back to that consciousness undergoing this exploration. And I would say that this exploration is one of many that it's undergoing. And did you do you seem to think that this reality is this universe, this one song is one of many songs that infinite consciousness is exploring? Is that how you perceive?
Yeah, I agree with what you've said about that. I think so. I mean, it's a whole huge rabbit hole, but I think there's no way that this is the only in the vast universe that this is the only. I mean, and this is all. I mean, if this is a projection or a simulation to to your show, then And that's even what like mystics like Ramana, he would say like the world that we see is not real. It's a projection of mind. Well, then if this is a projection, if this is just one project, I mean, there's probably infinite projections of mind, right? That are happening simultaneously. So, but we don't really know that until we awaken back to all the way to it'd be good to get to that point where we can actually see the projector.
Yeah.
And not just the projection.
Yep. Yeah. And that in itself is what is most primal about our awareness and our consciousness. And that sort of most primal, it's like going back and back and back, and not the coloration of the experience that I'm having, but going back and back and back to the most uncolored, most primal, like the Rupert Spira analogy of the screen before there's the coloration of the experience that's on the screen in the movie. So that's before that movie that is being played on the screen, it is the screen, it is the consciousness, it is that awareness, that most primal, and that it's hubristic to think that the only consciousness is these 8 billion nerve endings on this planet, and the dogs, they're just less of that consciousness. And just think about the hundreds of millions, billions, it's billions, the billions of animals that are slaughtered, that are raised and slaughtered, the raising of a little consciousness and slaughtering it and eating. I mean, that's a whole nother thing. Like, anyway, that's a whole nother thing. Life feeding on life, and like what's above us feeding on us. There's a whole nother, let's hope that we can maximize the basic needs of people around the planet, regardless of whether they're enlightened without basic needs or not, because nobody wants diarrhea, and nobody wants polio, nobody wants this shit. So let's eradicate it so that people don't have to suffer through that, and then they can do whatever they want with their time and creativity and stuff like that. So yeah. Okay. Some silly questions.
All right.
I've really been enjoying this silly segment
on
wrapping the shows. It's super fun.
Okay.
Okay. So the first question is, do you shower in the morning or at night?
Morning.
In the morning?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you do that to kind of wake up and get yourself ready for the day? Is that why you prefer the morning?
Yeah, and to start with a kind of more clear energy, or more of like a reset energy, I guess.
Yes. And then tell me, do you shower for approximately 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 5 minutes? Where are you at in your shower timing?
Not too long. I would say like 7-8 minutes.
7-8. Okay, You're quick. That's a fairly quick shower length. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're pretty much in there. Maybe you have a couple shower thoughts, couple, but you're in there mostly efficiency to move into the next.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you do shampoo, conditioner, and body wash? Do you do all three? Do you only do shampoo? What
only
do you do?
Shampoo and soap.
Shampoo and soap. A bar of soap.
No, like a separate soap, like a liquid.
Oh, like a liquid soap.
Yeah.
That's not body wash, but it's liquid soap.
Yeah.
Okay, I see. Interesting. Okay. Do you have a loofah?
No, I don't. Sometimes I'll dry skin brush before I shower.
What's that mean?
Like you take the brush, like those long brushes, and you brush your skin to exfoliate, and it's good for your lymph. And so then you wash the dead skin cells off when you go into the shower. So there's some people that say that that's really healthy.
Interesting. So what is this? Just like a longer and thicker brush?
Yeah, so you can just
reach brush your skin.
Yeah.
Oh, your back?
Yeah, everywhere.
Oh,
You're supposed to do it whole body, and like certain strokes that kind of like move towards your internal. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, whoa. Interesting. What's the name of the brushes usually? Like called?
You just get them in, I don't know, in either health food store. Like, I think if you just search dry skin brush.
Dry skin brush
on Amazon, you'll probably find.
If anybody wants to follow the Anthony Flores shower routine, dry skin brush, I love it. Okay, and then what do you usually have some shower thoughts?
Yeah, I usually will just more think about what I have to do, like like actions for the day. So they're pretty boring.
Yeah, actions though for the day.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Like kind of
Okay.
like what's coming up for the day.
Mm-hmm.
Because usually I'll meditate first, and one of the reasons why I don't take longer showers is because if you're meditating like 90 minutes in the morning, like before work is starting, before all all this other stuff starting, like you just don't have, you kind of have to shave time off where you can. So
Yeah.
so yeah, that's where I would cut time. But I in terms of thoughts, and I will usually shower after meditating and after journaling.
Yep.
So kind of gotten everything out. So it's more of like just my more pretty concrete of like, okay, what am I going to do this morning?
Yep. Now, do you, when you get to your, let's go on to sleep. So when you're going to bed at night, you have to take your socks off. How do you take your socks off?
I kind of peel them down from the top.
But
I don't make them go inside out.
Which hand do you go with first? Hand.
Right hand.
Right hand to left foot?
Yeah.
Okay, right hand to left foot, and then you peel them.
Yeah.
But you don't reverse them.
No, I don't reverse them.
Yeah,
no,
okay.
Because I don't want to have to like reverse it back.
Yeah, yeah. And then you do the same thing with the other one.
Yeah.
On your left hand. Okay.
Yeah.
And then so then you go, do you sleep naked?
No, just in
boxers or whatever?
Yeah, shorts and a t-shirt.
Shorts and a t-shirt.
Yeah,
okay.
boxer shorts or shorts and a
Okay,
t-shirt.
okay.
Yeah. And I have a chili pad, which is
what's that?
Which is like a thing that cools your bed. So it has this like thin layer of, basically it puts a thin layer of water on your bed, and then it air conditions kind of the water, so it keeps your bed surface very cool.
Yeah.
So that then you don't toss and turn as much, and you go into deeper sleep basically.
Oh, interesting.
So it's a cool biohack.
Huh. Wow. So many of these biohacks. Wow. Cooling pad on the bed.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's called a chili pad. Yeah.
Chili pad.
Yeah.
Do you sleep about what, 8 hours, 8 hours, something like that?
Varies. I think weekends I sleep a little more because I don't have as much work, but my workload's been really high. So during the week, a lot of times it's more like 6.
Yep.
And then maybe like 8 to 9 on the weekends.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
I see. I see. And then, do you lucid dream?
Not really. I've never been a big dreamer. It's weird because I know a lot of people who are meditating and doing their very vivid dreamings. Not too much. It's very rare that I actually remember dreams.
Do you write them down if you do remember them?
I do, but yeah, again, it's just so rare.
Okay. And then what do you normally, when you wake up, you're journaling and then meditating, or meditating then journaling? And when you're meditating, are you usually doing neurofeedback on that meditation? Yeah.
Sometimes I do it if I've been pushing my system too much. I might not do neurofeedback because it is more intensity, but generally it's more deep and more rewarding, or more it's more intense, and I think there's more progress made if I'm doing it with neurofeedback. So I will tend to do neurofeedback primarily. Probably like 75% of the time. It's about the right ratio.
Yeah. And then do you have a procedure do you prefer to sit in a specific way? Do you prefer eyes open?
I sit
closed?
Yeah, it's very specific. I sit, I can't do full lotus, unfortunately, but I do half lotus. I sit erect. I sit on a cushion on a pad, so I don't have my back to anything. So, my practice is generally like 90 minutes. And I'm able to stay. I mean, my legs do get a little stiff at the end, or hips or whatever, but I can stay there. And then, I'll take the Ramana Maharshi picture like I was describing. And I'll start with eyes open. That usually produces a lot of delta. And then from there, my eyes will just tend to close organically, and then that will shift more into gamma, and then there'll be more of a love or a kind of ecstatic experience. But it's not always like that, and it's not always like rainbows. Sometimes it's actually like a
lot of monkey mind.
Well,
you have to reset.
There can be the neurofeedback doesn't produce that much. One of the benefits of neurofeedback is the sound. I think you focus on the sound so that it reduces the monkey mind, because you're not giving the monkey mind attention, and so it kind of fades into the background and the sound becomes prominent. But where I'll say it's not like, when I say it's not all like rainbows and love and light, it's because sometimes there's like very deep emotional processing or healing or past life stuff or things that come up. I mean, there's a lot of purification that happens, I think, especially in gamma and really where there's a lot of intensity. There, like anything that's unresolved in the system, I mean, if it's moving you towards, as you move towards enlightenment or awakening, any of that karma, anything that's unresolved has to arise, and it has to be burned in kind of that fire of spiritual awareness. And a lot of it can be painful sometimes, but you're never given more pain than you have the capacity to handle. I believe that as well.
Yeah. Yep.
So as my capacity has grown, I get shown more stuff, but then I process and transcend that, and then the experience just gets richer and deeper and more powerful. So you come to respect it and actually appreciate
hardships, and sufferings,
all of that.
Because those traumas trigger treasures, and the more that resilient you become and the faster your bounce back speed, the more efficiently you integrate and move on. Yeah. That's okay. I see. And then what are you typically journaling?
I'm actually just exclusively journaling on my meditation experience.
Okay.
I probably should journal separately for something else, but basically I'm just noting, I'm documenting like what's going on for me in meditation, which
that's awesome.
Which anchors kind of
Yeah.
the experience, and
Totally.
and because whatever you experience in meditation tends to be kind of very transient. It's hard to remember.
Yep.
But also because I'm on this path of like trying to chart new territory.
Yep.
In terms of using neurofeedback to kind of speed up spiritual awakening, I also feel like it's good for me to document what's going on with me, so that then I can, potentially share that in the future, right?
Yes.
Like share the whole journey and not just the end point of the journey, so that people can see like this stage, this was going on, and
that's right.
I was struggling with this, and I had this, these pains and these things going on, and this happened, so that later when there's all this progress, it's like people are like, oh,
you're documenting your plate juggling on the way to the stage where you're going to have the audience watching you juggling, but they don't see all the broken plates.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to see.
Yeah.
And the profound realizations that you've had along the way.
Exactly.
This is kind of like the anthropology and archaeology of the human race. And it really needs to be taken a little bit more seriously. I'm glad you're doing the logging. I think that journaling is super important. I mean, I have over 4,000 Evernote files. We're over 700 conversations in just 2
years.
in 2018 and 2019. I know. And so I think that the same style of process of documenting your life in some way, whether it be the journal for meditation or sleep journal or life journal or notes or videos or audio or books or whatever you do, leave some sort of trace of your experience. And it's this very important, cool, reflective process also at the same time of healing. And there's a lot of grief journals. There's a lot of really interesting ways to to do that documentation process. What is your favorite food?
It's I would say like not healthy, but like there's buffalo cauliflower at Erewhon's.
Oh,
it's really
wow.
good.
That is so good. Yeah.
I got really addicted to that before, and then I had to like reduce it because it's fried and it's not good. It's not healthy, but it's I don't know. It's a good junk food.
Yeah, buffalo cauliflower. That's favorite for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't always. I think I was like lasagna as a kid.
Lasagna too. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Jeez. I just don't handle dairy that well anymore. Moussaka, like the
what's that?
That's like it's kind of like moussaka. I think
moussaka.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of like a lasagna, but with eggplant and potatoes.
Oh, that sounds great.
And like similar. I think it's in I forget which cuisine it's in. Anyways, those are some of my favorites.
Wow. Yeah, those do sound good. And then let's see. Let's let one last one. What is your favorite way to play?
Oh, wow. Hmm. I don't know. Lately, this is gonna sound very weird, but I think you like weird here.
I do. I love weird. I love it.
I've been experimenting with taking CBD, like little or no THC, basically CBD through vape or another form, and combining it with a brain mood booster brain kind of like spray that this one client that I work with, they have. It's this kind of juice and
nootropic.
Yeah, nootropic kind of juice that you spray. And there's something about the synergy of those kind of like creates a I don't know, for me, which I think it's unique to me, but I think everybody has a kind of their own really positive experience. It's kind of like a little bit of like a mini ayahuasca kind of
That's
state.
so interesting.
Like I feel super altered and like basically but not like it's weird, not altered in a way like I'm completely I'm completely
you're
connected.
You're like executing your things that you need to get exactly.
But it's like it's almost
but
it's
you're
like
doing it in more,
it's a different dimension. It's almost like it flips open a different dimension slightly, and like there's a lot of joy and lightness, and so it creates a very fun because you asked me like favorite way to play. It creates a very playful environment or vibe. So yeah, I'm happy to share that or give you whatever the links for the show notes that you can put in for that stuff.
Totally. Wow. Interesting. So I'm always fascinated by biohacking in the nootropic space. And so that's really interesting.
Yeah, I've got some great stuff to share with you there.
Okay, cool. We'll give you guys another report next time on how that's going. And we might show you guys on the round 2 as well, maybe. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I could bring some.
That'd be fun, yeah. Wow. Anthony, what a blast this has been.
Yeah,
man.
Thank you.
We crushed it.
I'm so grateful. Yeah, thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
Likewise, yeah. All things meditation and neurofeedback. Unity consciousness. That's right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. So let us know what you're thinking. And also, talk to more people about meditation, about neurofeedback. Go and make it more routine. Practices in the space, visualizing your data, getting that quantified self data stream so you can see at a better level, feel at a better level on a moment-to-moment basis daily. And check out, again, the link in the bio below to Anthony's Instagram profile. Go give him a follow. Also, check out the links in the bio below to Simulation. You can support us, help us grow, help us flourish here in LA. We have a lot of things we want to do. I'll go ahead and say that one of the things that I want to do as soon as possible, and we would love your assistance with this, is being able to have the show notes for every single show, and so that it's broken up into those segments really nicely in YouTube. In order for that to happen, I need that slight bit more assistance. So help join us in the community so that we can get the transcription team to paid well so that they can do that for us, so that they can be chunked into the sections. And support the other artists, the entrepreneurs, the scientists, the spiritual leaders in your communities around the world that you believe in. Help them flourish. Maximize human potential. Actualize your gifts. Build the future. We love you very much. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon. Peace.